Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, no matter where you are in this big wide world of ours. Welcome to episode 181 of Your Next Level. Today's topic is, what is your biggest fear in business? But before we get into that topic, I'm going to have the people here give a brief overview of where they are, what they do. Don't be shy to reach out to these people, talk to them, book a coffee with them. You don't know who they know. They could be the person that you need to get your business to where you want it to be. So with that, I'll turn it over. We'll start with Brian, then Alan, then Van Gillies. Brian?
Good morning. My name is Brian K. McNeill, and I'm a sales coach. I'm a sales confidence coach. I'm also an author and a speaker and those kinds of things. That's what I do. Okay, but who I am is a believer. I'm a believer. And I believe that God has uniquely gifted and qualified me to teach people how to sell themselves and their services better. My whole adult life is giving honor to my Heavenly Father through the gifts that He has given me. And my gift is the teaching so that they earn more money. I feel like I give honor to what I do by doing what I do as good as I can do what I do. I'm super excited to see Peter in the room. Good morning, sir. But that's who I am. That's what I'm here to do. And people who earn their living with something to offer the world, people who earn their money with something that they have, whether it's coach, consultant, whether it's any kind of service. I am here in service of those folks so that they can sell it better and earn more money.
Thanks, Brian. Alan?
Hi, everybody. My name's Alan Edwards. I'm based in Hampshire in the UK, and I'm a property problem solver. So anyone who's got a property which is causing them a problem because it's got issues such as it's empty, or it might have a structural problem, or it might be partially used but uneconomic. We redevelop buildings and we create good quality residential homes out of unused or underused commercial property, or indeed out of land that needs development and thereby can increase its value, create wealth, and thereby create profit. So we believe in win-win solutions. And if you've got any sort of property problem, no matter what it is, we operate in the UK and in Europe, and also sometimes beyond there. So just give me a call. I'll put my details in the chat box below. That's all for me. Cheers.
Thanks, Alan. Van Gillies?
Hello, everyone. I was 45 years in the world of technology, traveling everywhere, helping companies. And many companies would hire me to bring technical expertise, project management, training, and that type of thing. And during all those years traveling, I found that a lot of companies, their issue was not necessarily a technical issue. Some of it was business culture. Some of it was their employees had so many mental barriers that they were not able to really apply all the hundreds of thousands of dollars of training that they had gone through. So I started working with these people just on the side for free for decades, helping them with their personal issues, their mental barriers, and sabotaging thoughts and so forth. And so 3 years ago, I decided to start a business where that's what I do. So my angle is, normally they hire me for technical expertise, but I go in there and help them with all the things that are underlying the issues that really prevent them from being successful.
That's interesting, Van Gillies. You know, what type of issues would these key people and companies have?
Well, the first one back in 1998 that I did was the second largest bank in Brazil. They had a project. It was a 2,000 branch deployment, and it had been stalled for almost a year. And they had called in so many technical experts and all this stuff. And somehow they got my name. They said, come out here for 3 months and see what you can do, because no one's been able to do anything. I went out there thinking it was going to be a technical issue. When I got there, there were 60 people, and I asked them, okay, do you guys know what you're doing? They said, we have no idea what we're doing. I said, okay. So they had no vision. They were just given tasks. And so what I did was I went to the director of the bank and I said, I want you to tell your managers that I represent you, and you tell me what are your 5 important activities that when I'm done here in 3 months, you tell me, great job. So he says, these are the things that are important to me. So he told his managers that that's what I'm going to work on. And the first day, there were probably 5 emergencies by 7 a.m., but none of them were part of what he wanted done. And so they were always being distracted by all these things that were seemingly important, but they weren't really part of the project because no one knew what the project was. So I said, I have to be speaking with the guy or the person who is the one that says, I'm the one who makes the decisions. I don't want to speak with someone who says, let me find out. So those are the things I learned in that first project is you've got to talk to the person where the buck stops here. And I need their permission to be able to speak to everyone so people know that my representation is that director. And then I noticed it was basically the first part was resource management because a lot of people were in the wrong positions. They had supervisors that were somebody's brother or cousin or something, but they weren't really qualified. So I started making changes. And within the first week, people were getting there at 7, people were starting, and that was it. Yeah. And so when I finished, the post review was, we thought you were bringing technical expertise. What you brought was a change in culture. And that was really what started me on that path. Yeah.
Excellent. With that whole thought in mind, that's basically what we just say, solving a personal problem or, getting their mindset straight opposed to, I got to get the job done.
Exactly.
Excellent. Peter, are you up for sharing?
Yeah.
Peter!
Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I've been struggling a bit today, but otherwise I'm fine. My role is to get people to talk to each other in a way that makes them feel comfortable. That's what it really means. And you'd think that would be so simple, right? But there's so much distrust and skepticism and crap in our world, right? That if they come across someone like Brian, for example, who is strong in character and good in personality, and he's got a great smile and he's got a great presence, he can overcome that naturally. But there are many people who don't have those strengths, but are trying to do the same job as Brian, right? And they can't do it. And the reason they can't do it is because they can't communicate. And the reason they can't communicate is because they don't believe in themselves enough. That's what it amounts to. They are doubting their own ability to do certain things. And the reason I'm saying this is because, sorry, today I was well outside my comfort zone. I actually ran a workshop for 17 CEOs, right? And the workshop was all about the impact of AI on your industry. Now, what do I know about AI? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Well, apart from ChatGPT, that's all. But I posed some questions to these guys, and I was probably the eldest in the room. I mean, there were a couple of 70-year-olds, but there's no one close to 80 like I was, right? So at least I had age on my side when it came to that, okay? But there was one young guy there who was excited about AI, and I encouraged him to be that way because it is you can't deny the future, etc., right? But what fascinated me was the conversation that took place in that room between the CEOs there, and I just sat and watched and listened, right? And there was so much uncertainty, fear, the unknown. Many of them are scared. I said to you, are you scared about the future of your industry because of the impact of AI? Because you can use AI for your own benefit. You don't use it against yourself. I'll just finish by saying this. the absolute lack of conversation skills amongst those CEOs truly amazed me. Truly amazed me. They were not prepared. Hey, Glenda, nice to see you. They were not prepared to open up and say, I don't know. They were not prepared to open up and say anything. All they did was push other people. And that to me made me think, how can a CEO run a company if they've got conversation skills like this? Right? That really bedraggled me. And in the end, I said to them, look, let me tell you something. First of all, I'm the oldest person in the room. Secondly, I know nothing about AI. Nothing, except I think it's a very valuable tool. I don't want you to be scared of it either. But thirdly, and most importantly, I'm surprised and disappointed at the fact that you can't talk to each other. And you've met before, all of you. But this topic put the clamp on the conversation, and I don't know why. I'll finish on that point. That's all.
With that, Van Gillies, you were saying a lot of the CEOs you met didn't know why they were there.
Yeah, the part of what breeds that is when I was at IBM, I was working part-time at IBM while I was at the University of North Texas, and my professor would say, "At IBM, the premier marketing machine." I said, "Well," I raised my hand. I said, I work at IBM. All I see is order takers, and the only way that you can advance is the next step is management." Because they didn't have a roadmap for, let's say someone wanted to remain a salesperson or remain an engineer. There was no place to go except, oh, manager. And so I was, I'm 20 years old. I don't know anything, but I knew something just was off. And this is the only way to go. And that's why my manager, I had 13 managers in 14 years. 2 of them actually knew what they were doing. And what was interesting was the only time I got advanced or promoted or a raise was with those 2 managers. The other ones, because I realized they didn't know how to manage, you didn't get anything, because I was never in the management meetings, but I started realizing whoever can really communicate, like you're talking about, Peter, whoever can really communicate what's going on is the one that gets the money for promoting their people. So I think a lot of times people are in positions because that's the only roadmap, or they go to school to be a manager, which doesn't necessarily mean they're qualified. So.
That is so very true. In the security industry, the joke was you got promoted to your level of incompetence. And unfortunately, that happens in a lot of police forces and a lot of security agencies. You're promoted to your level of incompetence, which creates a lot of problems for the people under you. So,
forgive me, but that's called the Peter Principle. And it was a book written in the early 90s called The Peter Principle. And people get promoted to their level of incompetence. And most people get promoted to their level of incompetence because they're incompetent in the role that they have been promoted to. It's a shame, but it's called the Peter Principle. Sorry, Peter.
Pretty appropriate. Yeah. Actually, I mean, I don't want to monopolize this, but this truly blew me away. The fact that these people who are with a position of authority in 20 different companies could not have a conversation. He said, I need your skills, Peter. I can't get these people to open up. Well, you know what? I failed dismally. I couldn't get them to open up either. I try, and I think I am pretty good with conversation skills. But these people were not prepared to put their lack of knowledge or lack of understanding or their fears or uncertainties or skepticism, whatever it is, they weren't prepared to overcome that and talk.
Now, with that thought in mind, Peter, what conversations do you think these people are going to have in their own heads after that meeting? I'll bet their conversations are entirely different than when they went into the meeting.
We did have some interesting discussions at points there, but I didn't want to position myself as some AI expert. That wasn't the whole point of it, right? But they kept putting it back to me. I said, no. Woo, woo, woo. All I'm asking you to do is to talk to each other, to express to each other what your thoughts are about the potential impact on your industry of AI. How's it going to be, both positive and or negative? Because it can be both.
That is for sure. I think you likely stimulate a lot of conversations with them after, and when they start to realize the value of what you had to say. Who knows? When are you going to talk to them again?
Yeah, next Tuesday.
It'll be interesting to hear what the results were.
Because I said to them on stage, just be honest. Tell us what you think. Is that too hard to ask?
It actually is too hard to ask. In my early part of my career, I worked for Shell Canada. I was in the marketing department and handled all the real estate for Ontario. And I was privy to the hierarchy because of my position there. And what I saw was the hierarchy, the strength that if you were to come in and challenge them, all of a sudden you sort of in a very short time, you kindly started being pushed aside and started becoming a downgrader, like your career started changing. And I saw that because I had a point in my career with them where I did challenge somebody because I knew what I was doing and I knew what I was doing was right, and somebody really challenged me. Now, I was very fortunate because at that point in time, women were not on the more in the management level at that time. And I held a great position and I was able to come forth with a lot of details because I could back up my statements. But I saw, as I was watching and lived, like I worked there for close to 15 years. So a lot of things I watched from the vice president and at times even the president down. It was it really showed you the fear in management, how they didn't like to be challenged, even with people who were strong, who understood, who had the abilities there. And instead of taking those people and basically bringing them in and bringing them up because they could actually help the areas like in marketing where I was, it was more the fear that they put them under the bus. It was a very eye-opening time.
With that in mind, Glenda, can you introduce yourself and a bit about your background?
So I have a very incredible background. My name is Glenda Kroll, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. And thank you very much. And I'm sorry that I'm late, so my apologies. I am a reinvention coach, and I help women to have 40 who find that they are not where they thought they would be or wanting to be. I help them find their sweet spot where they want to be, and those who are really interested as well to build their wealth through teaching them the beginning stages of real estate investing. My life started as I was a paralegal, and I did that for a short time because I actually had a senior lawyer who was mostly very much a bully and really took advantage of the of the newbies such as myself, and I didn't enjoy it. But during the time while I was educating myself to become a paralegal, I worked part-time as a sales clerk for a chain of women's wear stores. And when I was about to leave to move my life into that field and become a paralegal, I created a lot of people at that point that really highly respected me for how I came up and how I came through as a clerk. And I ended up coming back to this, and I went into came back as a floating manager, opening stores across Canada, and then turned out and becoming a sales supervisor for my own set of stores in Western Canada. And I did that for a number of years until business started changing, and they wanted me to move my home places from Toronto to Edmonton, which I didn't want to do. And I transformed myself. And from that point on, I went into Shell Canada, and I got a job because of my legal background as a senior analyst for the real estate department, and I handled all the lands and gas stations and property in Ontario market. So that's the whole section of Ontario. And I did that for close to 15 years until my children came around. And at that point in time, because my job was very intense, I left my job and became a stay-at-home mom for 8 years. And at that point in time, when my children were around 6 or so, I ended up deciding that my marriage was basically, I felt a farce and being involved with very narcissistic people, and so against who I standed for. I left my marriage and had to recreate myself, and went back to bringing myself back up to bringing back into the real estate. And then I found myself later on in another relationship, and ran with my partner at that time, ran an import-export business for 14 years. And that was bringing and buying products from Ontario and the US, and then exporting them to the Caribbean. And I did that and brought sales up from under $1 million, and brought the company up to basically covering and surpassing $6 million in sales, and creating a huge business until 9/11 hit. And 9/11 changed the whole structure of exporting because of what was going on in the world. And on top of it, one of our biggest distributors moved from the US base to Ontario, which changed our whole financial outlook of how we did it. And in that time, I found that my partner wasn't who he said he was, and I ended up leaving that relationship and found myself, and that's another whole story, because instead of leaving, I actually got my ducks in order. And that's what I teach people, of teaching them that you have to bring in your own power, and building myself and creating a life before I left. And then I went back in and had to recreate myself once again. And I found myself a mentor, and I started buying real estate. And my very first property I bought was a single family dwelling, and I converted that single into a legal duplex. And so I went through having to redo the entire house and renovate, and became a landlord, and then moved on and just copied and pasted that same whole thing, and then started flipping houses, and did a great job until COVID hit. And then I hit another big roadblock where we talk about the situation of what's your worst dream or nightmare. a very severe accident happened and I was knocked down and I broke my sacrum and my pelvis, and life came to a whole credible stop. And I had to spend the next year healing myself and teaching myself how to walk again. And this was just the ending of COVID. So my doctor, who I had just retired, and I didn't have anybody, and getting medical attention was difficult. So I set on that journey and I built myself back up mentally and physically until I started walking and running, and then I had to recreate everything because my business at that point came to a full standstill. And during this entire time, I also am a caretaker to my two brothers who are mentally challenged, and I've had challenges through their health. So I have always had a lot of balls in the air. And that's why I do what I do now, is because when life knocks you down, you just get back up there, you finish with your pity parties, and you just believe that you can do it no matter what, because I am a true advocate for that, because that's been my life forever. Thank you.
What
That's
an
quite a
incredible
story.
woman you
So
are,
when is the
Shirley.
book coming out?
Yeah, I have many a books in me, like I said. Yeah,
It's very inspiring. That's very inspiring.
well, you know, like when life gives you lemonades, you
Gives
have to
you-
show life gives you lemons, you got to make the lemonades. And I really truly believe, I'm the youngest of four kids. When you grow up watching people that are mentally challenged who don't have the abilities to do, and I've seen the strength of my brothers of doing. And when, of the things, like my brother was in a major car accident at a time when my father was dying of cancer, my brother was in a major car accident, and I had two young children running a business. And like I said, my life is just full of things. And when I saw when I've seen for Alva the strength in my brothers of doing things who weren't able to do, but they still persuaded and conquered things, then how can I sit back and have a pity party in myself? And I believe that they've given me the strength and compassion and understanding, that's why I have the strength within myself that I do.
Excellent. That's a really great story. And like Van Gilly said, it's very inspirational, and hopefully you sell it, you share that a lot. Just before we get on to our topic, got a few apologies for people that can't be here. Pat Dreyer just flew back to uh, his hometown there last night, so he got in late, and he apologized, Brian, for not being able to get together with you while he's there, and hopes to get back out there and get to meet you.
I thought he was still here. Actually, we didn't communicate when he got here, but I can understand that. He was busy.
Yeah. And Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus, they're in line for that horrific hurricane that's due to hit Florida. So hopefully they'll be safe. And, Yvonne is in Jamaica. Hopefully they're clear of that hurricane. And there's a lot of other great people that wish they were here. The one thing I'm looking forward to here today is today's topic. What is your biggest fear in business today? Throw this open to the floor and go from there.
I'll begin it because just what I said, my biggest fear happened to me. My business came to a whole standstill not too long ago. This was only 2 years ago, when I became hurt and couldn't walk. And I think, we're all dealing with different things, like the onset of AI and all the rest. But when you are physically unable to work, it's a nightmare. So that's the greatest fear. And but you can rebuild.
Alan, you had your hand up there.
Thanks, John. My biggest fear is around cash flow because I hate to be in a position where I can't pay the things that I need to pay for. So the business I'm in is classically difficult business because of cash flow issues, and particularly when you get recessions, often construction is the first into a recession, and then it's the first out as well. And you get a lot of construction companies actually go bust on the way out of a recession. So they survive the recession, and then they start to overtrade as the market goes up. And so they find that they run out of cash. And I've noticed a lot of bankruptcies with companies in the UK recently, long-established companies, and some of them quite big companies. And, I think it's quite a difficult time for companies, and not aided by the fact that sometimes people who are creditors, they will actually withhold money, and this actually forces a company into bankruptcy. So, I think that's my biggest fear, is cash flow issues. Cheers, thanks.
Excellent. Brian, I know you're going to have to head out of here quick, so get your input here.
Thank you very much, John. I was thinking about the answer to the question because of my work. I'm a sales coach and a sales trainer. I know the biggest fear of salespeople is running out of people to talk to. They're so afraid they're not going to have enough people to call on. But that's not the question of what is salespeople's biggest fear. The question is, what is Brian's biggest fear? And I think it would have to go with close to what Glenda said. What if I'm physically unable to do what I do? What if something happened to my voice or something, or I'm unable to work? So knowing that to be the biggest fear, we need to attack that or put things in place. So what if I can't put my hands to it? There was so much that was going on this morning. I'm from something I heard Van Gillis say, something I heard Peter say. I wanted to lift this up because I think we all need to do a better job of letting people know what we do. Van Gillis reminded me of a story of when I went into a bank to cash a check that a company had just paid me. I wanted to cash it. And I had just gave a class on, if anybody takes money from you, they get your business card too. Like if you pay a bill or tip your server. So I was at a bank, the teller asked for my check and they said, okay, I'll give them my business card too. And my business card said sales coach on it or sales trainer on it at the time. It was young in my career. And she goes, oh my God, we need your help here. Like, what are you talking about? She goes, they put so much pressure on the tellers to sell. And she almost was moved to emotion to just be talking to a sales trainer. I had never considered that they get pressure on training them. So I said, well, who should I talk to here about giving a class on how tellers can sell? And she pointed me to a lady over there. And I told her what I do too. And she was so floored. But the point is, I did give a class there. But the point is, we don't know who's looking for us at any given moment. When Peter was talking about these senior executives not able to communicate, somebody in that room really needed to hear him say that. So I'm just been impressed with how much we need to make sure that people within our spheres know what we need to do. But that's all I have. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Gillies?
I really, part of what I help people to do is to realize that whatever you speak is what you bring. So I really shy away from saying my biggest fear, but I will say my biggest challenge is visibility. Just what you just said, Brian, because once people realize what you are able to accomplish, it spreads like wildfire. But it's not until people really know what you do And so that's my biggest challenge, is to get visibility, because when I was working with IBM and then I was a consultant with Cisco and a consultant with NVIDIA, I never had to go out and get customers. They had me busy 46 weeks out of the year, flying everywhere in the world. And then when I stopped that 3 years ago, now it was my responsibility to go and get customers. So this is a whole new thing for me, working with all this stuff. I mean, I was a consultant for NVIDIA, which they do artificial intelligence, and I was teaching scientists how to build AI models. And I have a workshop for executives called Demystifying AI. And so once they would see me, they'd say, "Oh my gosh." Well, that was because I already had a door into these people because of these companies. But I don't have that door now, so I'm the door. And so my biggest challenge of what I'm going after is to find those doors so that people will get to know what I do and realize it's a very impactful thing for their business.
How do you see yourself correcting that?
Well, joining these masterminds, it's networking, because once people realize, like I heard Glenda's story. Well, there's people now that if someone says, I just can't seem to get back from, oh, I know somebody who's an expert at that, who really knows how to do that. So this is part of it. It's getting people learning about people and them learning about you. So this is what I'm doing. I'm involved in podcasts. I'm doing interviews. I've got summits. I've got all these things and getting involved in these. And this is how people get to know you. It's just, yeah. So that's how I'm getting past it, John. But it just, when you do it organically, it just takes some time. But then again, I must have come into this world with this inherent contract where I have never had to do a resume. IBM came on the university campus. I didn't have to look for a job. I get home and there's a voicemail on audio voice on my recorder of my telephone at home. A headhunter for Cisco. I've never had to look for a job ever in my life. So I just feel like I'm inspired to do certain things, study this, look for this, because I know it's for a reason. And then 5 months later, oh, that's why I was inspired to read that, because someone called me. And so that's kind of how I work. So I have part of that knowing something's going to hit and I'm preparing myself. So those are the things I'm doing.
May I ask you a question about your podcast?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't have a podcast, but
with you being a guest on the podcast, do you set up joint ventures with the person doing the podcast?
Yes. Every podcast I have, it happens the same way. I had a podcast yesterday, and after about 10 minutes, she goes, "Now I know what you're doing. Oh my gosh." I said, "Do you have any idea to help me is to make it so it doesn't take 10 minutes?" She goes, "No, because I do hundreds of podcasts. They all say a very similar thing, but it takes time to really, wait, you said something different." That's what the thing is. It's the differentiator. So when I'm on a podcast, people don't want to hear about mental barriers. It's not what excites them. It's raising the bottom line and poor performance improvement. So I have to talk about those things so people don't turn off. But once they realize, okay, how do you do that? And then I give them the examples that I gave you, like the thing in Brazil and I give them a bunch of examples. Then they get the picture, because they don't realize you bring you everywhere. You bring your trauma everywhere. You bring your trauma to work. They don't realize that, right? So it takes a little bit of working through their preconceived definitions of what does it mean and what's the reason you're not growing your business. It's like the guy from Circuit City. He's on an interview with a talk show. he's like one of the top companies in the world. The next year, they're bankrupt. How does that happen? That's because there's things going on that they don't want to talk about, and they have all these fears, and those fears overtake them. So that's what I do with the podcast. And so it just takes a little bit of speaking to get past people's already defined definitions of everything, and then they finally hear what you're saying.
Are you familiar with Steve Brossman from Australia?
No.
Look him up, because I think his podcast style, and he's all about being a guest, not having his own podcast. And he's in the high six figures from being a guest on podcasts. Look him up, and I'm sure that his ideas can really help you grow your podcast interviews and can help move your business to the next level.
Steve Bossman?
Brossman, Brossman.
Okay.
He's a good guy, Evangelist. He was also an extremely successful track and field athlete. Okay, he was the Australian professional champion. He knew my son. He still knows my son, who competed at the Olympic Games as well. But more importantly, he's a straight shooter, and he's making a fortune as a guest on podcasts.
Thank you.
Steve Brossman, yeah.
And if you happen to mention Peter's name, it gives you a leg up, just so you know.
Please do that. Please do it. I mean, he's one hell of a good guy. Okay, one hell of a good guy.
I was just going to ask Peter how anyone gets on this meeting. So there are a couple of people I've been working with recently who I think could bring something to this group if it's possible to invite them. Can I send you some details about that?
No, don't do that. I'll just give you a link in the thing and just give them the link.
Yeah, okay, I'll pass the link on. Yeah, they're both very capable in their own respective fields. So I'll invite them along to next time. Yeah. One of them's in Germany, the other one's in the UK.
One of the biggest things I think we all need to deal with, and we've all been virtually talking about it, is our communication skills. And so many people come in with their solutions instead of finding out what the prospect's problem is. And they try to give them this great, grand, and wonderful answer. And the prospect says, I'll think about it, or I'll call you, or whatever, because you haven't even come close to their real problem. And that, I think, is causing a lot of us to not get the prospects and clients that we're looking for. I know my skull's been a little thicker than others. It's taken me longer to learn this because, being a former cop and what have you, I wanted to run the show instead of keeping my mouth shut and letting people talk to me. So it's a great lesson we could all learn. And, it's Peter said it, and everybody here said it. It's our communication skills and getting better with ourselves. I had a conversation with a young lady yesterday from the US, and she said to me, what's more important, money or your health? I ran back and I said, you can have 1,000 problems that money can solve. If you're in a life and death situation, money doesn't matter. Your health is your primary concern. And I said, if you doubt it, go to any hospital. You can find some millionaires there that will give every cent they got for one more day.
Sure.
Does money mean anything? No. So, you have to have your health, both mental and physical. Money always come to me. Money is second. That is excellent. That's just
My
about
biggest fear, by the way, my biggest fear is me. It is. I got to make sure that my health keeps going as long as it possibly can. I've got a lot of people relying on me, and so health is my fear, because it can impact my business very, very quickly and very, very easily. So that's me. But I'm also a determined bugger and I never give in either. Otherwise, I'll have Glenda Kroll jumping all over me again. I don't want that to happen ever again.
She did a good job that day.
She did a brilliant job that day and she didn't hold back. I wish I'd recorded it. But I still in here, Glenda, still in here, Glenda. We all need the proverbial kick in the pants, and you are brilliant at it. There's no doubt about that.
No, my biggest fear is always making sure I get off my ass. I tell everybody else to get off your ass, get off their ass. My biggest fear is making sure I get off my ass as well. With that.
Is it a fear, John?
Yeah, because a lot of times I can be quite content to sit back and take life easy. And instead of getting out and doing what I need to do, I know what I need to do, but do I always do it? No. It's easier to tell people what to do than to actually do it sometimes.
Maybe you need some accountability people around you.
I need to replay that kick in the ass you gave Peter.
Well, just call me. I'll do the same to you.
And we'll record it. Actually, speaking of conversations, by the way, one of the issues that was brought up today with these CEOs as an adjunct to the AI was the impact on their bottom line in terms of their sales. And they knew because I was in the sales arena, right? And I said, the biggest problem with sales is the word sales because it's all in your head. So do me a favor, never ever talk about a sales appointment again. Just have a conversation. Just have a conversation. It makes a whole world of difference to what's going on. If you go into a setup where in your mind this is a sales conversation, that means you've got an agenda. And they know it, they can feel it, they can sense it, they can see it, all right? But if you go into it just as a conversation, okay, completely different. And that's the reason I'm going back next Tuesday, because they want to know more about that. So, because I don't want to talk AI anymore. So I'm happy to go and talk to them about conversations rather than sales conversations.
Everybody, don't forget to save the chat.
Peter, thanks everybody. Cheers.
And
thank you, John. Thank you for hosting.
Not a problem. Glad I can help, my friend. Like I say, make sure you save it and we could go from there.
One of my views on today's topic, I think it's a real general thing, because one of the things that, see, to me, we're in a meeting here and we're gathering information, sharing and all that. AI is the same thing. Instead of a meeting of 4 people, you have a meeting of 5 million people. And the response time of receiving information is very fast. And so when I would explain this to executives, you're basically asking a boardroom of all these people and you're getting information. So these masterminds, the reason I like to participate is because I want to take something home from what everyone spoke about, and to give us like Peter and I have spoken, and so he has some to-dos, some exercises, some activities, and so those are the things I'm reading things, I'm watching things, and because I now have information that I didn't have before, I'm thinking differently. And that to me is why I like these masterminds, because I'm going to be thinking differently today. Even Glenda's story, just the story. You see what I mean? That's why telling your story is so powerful, because not only is it inspirational, you get ideas as to how old is she? My gosh, she did this for 15, that for 15, that for 15, that for, you start realizing, wow, because I remember when I was in my 40s that a lot of the companies, there was this big push to get rid of all the old people because they were, and then 10 years later, they were calling back all the old people because they realized the young people didn't have the experience. So I've been through so many of these, I've been through, I think, 7 different so-called recessions, and they're all the same. It's just, whoever is controlling stuff is just resetting everything. And so if someone would have told me that when I was in my 20s, say, look, what you learned in school is not really what's happening. Read these books, and realize what's really happening in the world. Well, I didn't start reading those books until like 10 years ago, where I realized I knew it, but no one told me because they don't know. So these masterminds are so critical that when you have people that have the experience that all of us have, and we can really say, I used to do that in my Cisco teaching. I would say, let me tell you how it really works. It's not necessarily in the manual, but this is what it really does because I did it out in the field. That's what I gather from this. You guys have done it. It's not something in a book. And so I'm a different person now, just from today.
Glenda, I'd like to ask your permission to do something for your benefit, because that story that you told, I agree with Evangelist. That was an incredibly powerful story. And what I would like to do is to get one of my VAs to simply edit that bit out only and give it to you. Rather than the whole hour. You can have the whole hour, you get it anyway. But would you like to have that small segment that you could use in your own way? Because if you do, I'd be delighted to get someone to do it for you.
Thank you. I'll take you up on that. I
All right,
appreciate
because then you listen to what you just told us. Then you'll see why we were so blown away with what you did.
You see, I just take it as, like I've done so many things and had, I take it all for granted. And it wasn't until actually a little while ago, I'm starting something else. Like my life is always balls in the air, but I recently went to a group and stood upon this group of people who had young families with special needs children. And I stood upon them and I told them my story of growing up as what they call children like myself are called glass children because our parents see through us because they're too busy working or dealing with their other children. And I told them about my life and how now I look after my brothers and I want to teach them to make their own children building their confidence and their abilities and things like that, because I saw what my parents didn't do and I was challenged all through my life because of that. And I had a lot of things came onto my plate because my mother didn't prepare for the future when she wasn't around. And I want to teach other families about that. And when I started to explain my story to people and say what I've done and all the things that I've created for my siblings from, and even till today, like I still do everything. Families were just so blown away with it, everything. And it was at that point that I realized how much knowledge that I'm sitting with that I just take for granted. And I think this is very common with most of us, of the things that we live through. We don't think of it as being anything different because we've gone through it all. I'm just grateful that I'm still standing and I'm still going. And I say that still standing literally because 2 years ago I wasn't, so that's why I say I have a lot of gratitude and I don't live on pity parties. Hence my thing with you, Peter, is because, I have been knocked down so many times in my life. And I hold on and onto that, like we were just talking. My health is my wealth. Money is important to an extent, But if I don't stay healthy, I can't be there for my family. And for me, family is first.
And you didn't use any of those things as excuses either, because excuses become affirmations. You know, when every time you say, and then 9/11 hit, and then COVID hit, and then, you know, those were not excuses. Those were just incidences. Those were events. And when most people, all they do is talk about those events because they live it over and over and over. Whereas you were talking about what you did in spite of the event or despite the event. You see what I mean? The event was like an initiator, an activator, a catalyst for your next phase of life.
And that's been my whole life. Like when I started out going back many years ago, my first divorce, my husband was set out, very wealthy family, to destroy me, and which he was for a while, and I had lost all my power. And then at one point, $200,000 in debt from legal fees and nowhere to turn, struggling to even feed my kids. And I decided at one point when I felt I couldn't get any lower that I fired my lawyer and I walked into court and I said, I'm representing myself because nobody is hearing my words. And the courts are not protecting my children. My children are now suffering from this. And this is now like, do what you need to do to me. But if I don't be here for my own children, then what am I as a parent, as a mother? And I went into court and my life changed because I brought in my voice. I surpassed my fear, you know, the lawyer saying, don't say anything, you're not supposed to, you're not allowed to. And it was finally to the point is how much more am I going to be knocked down? How many more people are going to step on top of me and knock me down? And I am now at a point in life, I don't know how I'm going to get out, but somehow that one day I got in front of a judge who was the head of the family court for Toronto. And she finally heard my story and looked through my past and saw that all these judges, nobody saw. I created a book of all the letters that my ex was sending me because he was always writing. He was sending me all these threatening letters, and I created a whole file of them, and I brought them to court. And I had one judge who said to my husband, "Shame on you, you shouldn't be doing that." But he didn't do it. That was it. And when this judge saw that, I said to her, can I ask you from this point on, every time he brings me into court, will you be the judge who will be on top of things? And she agreed to that and changed my whole changed my whole life from that point on. So when we have to learn that these things are here, like my life has always been about challenges, but it's just what you say, it's when you can stand back sometimes. What life taught me is instead of reacting, you got to stand back and you got to absorb what is happening so that you can think outside the box of what you can do. And that's been my biggest lesson in my life. And I tell that to anybody who will listen, how that time and time again has made such incredible shifts in my own life. So I love to be into masterminds because we change our perspective from what we hear from others. And that is, and I believe just what you said, I love what you said, because I am saying the same thing. When we talk in our world, like, oh, my world is falling apart, I don't say those things. I don't want those things to come out. No, somehow I will make it through. No matter what hits me, I always make it through. Somehow miracles are always bestowed upon me. My life, I have more stories of the miracles that have happened. It's amazing when you put yourself into the world of believing that somebody up there is watching, whether it be God, whether it be your angels, whatever, karma. I believe it is true. It happens. It's happened to me time and time again. So I say, I live in a world where I believe in creating love and peace. And when I see the world as it is today, it bothers me, but I'm not going to feed into it. I rather live in my own little world where I do what I do by helping others. And it all started from being a child, from watching my brothers who people were very mean to. And I don't want to ever see that type of life again.
Interesting. With that, guys, I got to run, but this has been a very interesting after conversation. And I hope we all benefit from it because, Glenda has shared some really great things.